programang patuloy na naninindigan sa katotohanan, katarungan at katuwiran.
Magandang gabi sa inyong lahat. Sa ngalan ni Brother Eddie Villanueva, ako po ang inyong lingkod, Kata Inocencio. At ito ang Diyos at Bayan, ang programang patuloy na naninindigan sa katotohanan, katarungan at katuwiran. Bilang pansamantalang tirahan ng mga biktima ni Yolanda sa Visayas, itinatayo ngayon ang mga tinatawag na bunkhouses. Pero ngayon pa lang, kaakibat na ng proyekto ang samot-saring kontrobersya. May ulat na di umano ay overpriced ang proyekto. Meron din nagsasabi na hindi nasunod ang tamang panuntunan sa construction of bunkhouses. Kaya naman tila hindi raw komportable o safe na tirahan ang mga ito. Aalamin natin ngayon kung ano ba ang katotohanan sa likod ng mga isyung nabanggit. Pero bago po natin simulan ang ating talakayan, ay gusto ko lamang kong paalala sa ating mga televiewers na live po ang Diyos at Bayan tuwing Miyerkules alas 8 hanggang alas 9 na gabi dito po sa Light TV 33. Kaya naman para sa ating mga tagapanood, pwede po kayong sumali sa aming talakayan. Magkomento lamang po o magtanong sa ating mga panauhin at maging sa aming mga host. Ipakikilala ko sa inyo ang aking co-host maya-maya lamang sa pamamagitan po ng pagtawag at pag-text sa mga numero na nasa inyong TV screen. Pwede rin po kayong magpadala ng inyong mga tanong o komento sa ating Facebook at Twitter page. Maaari rin humapanood ang Diyos at Bayan via live stream ngayon mismo. Pumunta lamang po sa website link na nasa inyong TV screen. Ipamalita po ninyo sa inyong mga kamag-anak at kaibigan abroad na pwede ho silang manood ngayon mismo ng Diyos at Bayan at pwede rin silang sumali sa ating talakayan. Paalala ko lang, ang Diyos at Bayan ay mapapanood tuwing Sabado sa GMA News TV ng hating gabi at tuwing Linggo sa GMA 7. Ayan. Bagamat wala ko si Brother Eddie ngayon, ay kasama po natin ang ating kumpare at katoto. Wala pong iba, kundi ang boses ng katotohanan. Alex Tinsay, welcome to Diyos at Bayan.
Yes, Kata, magandang gabi at magandang gabi sa lahat ng mga taga-subaybay ng Diyos Bayan. It's always an honor for me to be here with you.
Yes, para it's our honor and most especially dahil tayo ay sinasamahan ngayon ng mga importanteng tao na masasabi natin mga eksperto at makapagbibigay linaw sa isyong ating tinatalakay ngayon. Unang-una ko nang ipakikilala and I'm so thankful because he made time for Diyos at Bayan. Ang secretary po ng Department of Public Works and Highways, wala pong iba kundi si Secretary Rogelio Singson. Welcome po to Diyos at Bayan, sir.
Good evening, Alex.
Kasama din po natin ang Assistant Secretary ng Department of Social Welfare and Development. Wala pong iba kundi si Asec Vilma Cabrera. Welcome, ma'am.
Good evening,
Diyos at Bayan.
Good evening, Pastor Alex.
At nagbabalik sa Diyos at Bayan, ang Principal Architect and Urban Planner, Founder and Managing Partner ng Palafox Associates, at Presidente po ng Philippine Institute of Environmental Planners. Wala pong iba kundi si Architect Felino June Palafox. Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me again, Kata and Alex. Glad to be here with you.
And also joining us tonight is a UN resident and humanitarian coordinator to the Philippines. Please welcome Ms. Luiza Carvalho. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Alex, for having us. Thank you.
Ayan. Pare, ano bang pananaw mo dito sa ating topic ngayon? Kasi nagiging controversial siya dahil may mga kanya-kanyang pananaw at nagkaroon pa ng mga akusasyon, offer ng pagbibitiw, na hindi naman dapat talaga siguro. No? Siguro medyo mainit lang masyado ang issue, lalo na patungkol sa Yolanda dahil buhay ang nakasalanan.
Nag-iiyak ka agad, hindi pa naunawaan masyado yung issue.
Hindi, kaya gusto natin linawin ang issue ngayon dahil alam niyo naman, ang Diyos at Bayan, ang intensyon natin is to really not just inform but to educate, enlighten our viewers. And we're fortunate because we have 1 hour to do this. So you have the floor, you have the time to expound on the issue po. Siguro unahin na natin si Secretary Singson.
The man of the hour. He's in the hot seat.
Ano bang hot question mo para sa kanya, pare?
Well, gusto ko lang linawin talaga. Although ako, I have seen him work at kilala naman natin ang integrity ni Secretary Singson, no? Siya nga nagpasimula ng anti-corruption diyan eh. Pero ngayon na yung yung departamento niya ay nauugnay nga sa ganon. But I'm sure meron paliwanag diyan because knowing him, alam ko na hindi siya papayag. Kaya lang, alam niyo naman ang suspecha ng mga tao, yung mga nasa ibaba, no? Hindi ho natin maialis 'yan.
Okay, ipaliwanag ko lang in the bigger context, no. Yung shelter program ng gobyerno na assigned sa DPWH, no. This was even before Secretary Ping Lacson was designated as the coordinator or rehabilitation SAR, no. And my understanding is there are 3 stages. Emergency shelter in the form of tents, tarpaulins. Yun yung ginagawa ng mga international agencies sa ngayon. Kaya nakita nyo, nagkalat ang tents, doon sila nakafocus. Now, ideally, from emergency shelter, pupunta ka sa permanent shelter. But because of the scale of the damage wrought about by Yolanda, hindi mo magagawa agad yung total number of permanent houses that you have to build. Siguro, mabilis ka na kung makatapos ka ng 50,000 or even 100,000 in 1 year. But alam naman natin gaano karaming bahay na nasira. So for us to have the permanent shelter, we need a transitional shelter. Ito na yung bunkhouses, no? These are temporary in nature at the longest they should be staying there is 2 years. As against tents and tarpaulins where ideally they shouldn't be there longer than 4 months. So ganyan yung programa. Now, so habang ginagawa natin yung final site, relocation ng mga permanent shelter, dalawa yung ginagawa ng gobyerno. Nagdi-distribute tayo ng construction materials for those who want to construct and who can reconstruct on their own dun sa lugar nila, no? Wag lang sila doon sa no-build zone or doon sa na masasalanta na naman sila ng bagyo o any storm surge. Dapat sa safe zone sila, tutulungan sila ng gobyerno by providing construction materials. So that's one mode. The second is for those who are in the no-build zones at saka yung talagang walang kapasidad, habang hinihintay yung permanent houses, nagtayo tayo ng temporary bunkhouses, no? Hindi naman bago to. We have used this in Zamboanga, in Bohol, and previous disasters, no? Parang transition. Imbis na nasa eskwelahan o nasa mga evacuation center, ito yon, no? Now, ang issue dito is sukat, no? Sinasabi nila, maliit, kailangan mas malaki. Ang sagot naman namin, ang ginawa kasi namin is one bunkhouse has about 24 rooms, no? One room is 8.64 square meters. No? Ang sinasabi namin, kung malaki yung pamilyang gagamit niyan, pwede naman bigyan ng 2 unit. Hindi naman namin sinasabi, isang pamilya, isang
Palagi ko nandun ang
bunkhouse.
point of contention na baka akala nila
Isang buong pamilya, magsisiksikan
nyo doon.
So, ang magde-decide kung sino pupasok dyan is DSWD and the local government. So, alam ng DSWD yon na sila yung mag-identify at mag-a-assign. Para lang matapos na yung kontrobersyang yan, binago na namin yung disenyo doon sa mga hindi pa namin naumpisan at hindi pa namin natatapos. Tinanggal na namin yung partitions. So isang bunkhouse has only now 12 rooms na 17.28 square meters.
Lumaki na po.
Lumaki
So
na,
2
dumoble
rooms
na.
per family na ho, inassign ninyo.
Per family, kung talagang napakalaki ng pamilya, pwede bang...
2 units.
Oo.
Oo.
So, anyway, ganun na yung disenyo. So, mukhang wala ng issue yon. Now, whether it is overpriced, I can assure you it is not overpriced. Ang nagiging problema, because we had to bring in 70 contractors because we wanted to have the bunkhouses ready in time for Christmas. So we had 30 days from the time we started. Unfortunately, nagkaroon na nga ng kontrobersya. So, preno muna kami and we made the adjustments. No? Now, yung mga hindi pa natapos, dilinakihan namin. No? Yung dating common kasi yung wash area, no? Common toilets, common showers, common cooking area. So dati, 2 bunkhouses, 1 common facility. Ngayon, ginawa na namin 1-to-1 para mas komportable and which meets international standards na nga. No? So that's where we are. Now, whether it is under specs, sumunod ba sa specifications, that's another issue altogether. No? Kasi we understand from some of the contractors, they went to the area, wala namang mabili dun sa specs na gusto namin. Kasi dalawang malaking issue dyan. Yung bubong dapat makapal na yerong pinagamit namin. At yung sahig, dahil we wanted it raised, dahil alam namin ganito yung sitwasyon this time of the year, maulan, nagbaba. So we had the floor raised. And we specified marine plywood na 3/4. Ang nakikita namin ngayon, walang available na ganon, marine plywood. So some used boards, no, plyboards, or a thinner marine plywood. So yung mga ganon, hindi overpricing yun, under specifications yun. At sabi namin sa mga contractors, kung hindi kayo sumunod dyan, hindi namin kayo mababayaran.
So walang problema.
Walang problema.
Sa kanila yun, no? Yeah.
Pero sir, so far, na-inspeksyonan po ninyo, sumunod, nag-comply naman po yung contractors?
Hindi lahat. Precisely because, alimbawa, yung yero, ang in-specify namin is 0.40 millimeters. Eh, napakahirap ng supply ngayon doon, no? So, maaring ang nakuha nila is 0.3 or less, no? So, we will have to make that adjustment, no? Yung plyboard, yung available daw na marine plywood doon, 1/2, no? So, yun, ina-assess namin, tatagal ba yan kung 1/2 lang yung ginamit? But no damage has been done. Wala pa naman kami binabayaran. And until we accept, that's the only time we will pay.
Ma'am, laktawan ko lang muna, tatalon muna ako kay Architect Palafox dahil nadawit po kayo doon sa kontrobersya at tila kinwestiyon ninyo ang ginagawa ng gobyerno o yung standard na ini-implement po ng gobyerno. Ang tanong ko po talaga po bang may problema o kakulangan o anomalya doon po sa naitayo na pong bunkhouses o pinag-aaway lang ba kayo ng media? Sir.
Ang suot ko ngayon, fight truth decay. Kasi January 7th, we have a very professional, humble, honest Secretary of Public Works, Secretary Babe Singson. Nag-usap kami January 7th. This came about, another TV station, I was interviewed. And because I've done work in 38 countries, some of them post-disaster rehab. So I was asked kung in your international practice, what do you do? So there are internationally accepted standards, like 3.5 square meters per person, gender sensitive, so you don't let daughters sleep with their fathers or their brothers or grandfathers. And the principle was the house would grow as the income grows. The house would grow as the family grows. And we place also kitchen gardens so they can grow their own food. So I shared my international experience, and based on that, what I saw, the bunkhouses were built before I came into the picture.
Okay.
And I saw it in one LGU, December 13, Friday the 13th. And I was told that it was 8 square meters per family, or thereabouts. So I commented that based on our internal experience, it's substandard, undersized. But the day after, Secretary Singson called me up. He was in Tacloban. And what I saw was not even in Tacloban. And I think it's an opportunity for us the crisis created an opportunity to do things better. And I'm not officially connected with presidential assistance and rehab and reconstruction.
You were just consulted by
Secretary Ping Lacson,
Secretary
before he
Lacson.
accepted the job, he consulted me.
Okay.
And I agreed to help him, provided there are certain guidelines and conditions. Number one, no corruption. Number two, everything should be transparent, accountable, good governance. Secondly, we build back better, and the President has been saying that, safer, smarter, and more sustainable.
Okay.
And then no band-aid solutions,
Okay.
meaning whether immediate action, short-term, medium-term, or long-term, maybe it should be disaster resilient. Because in our country, sometimes nothing is more permanent than temporary. Like the temporary housing after World War II. We call them squatters, later on informal settlers. And the adhocracy system and the word temporary in our country, I think we overstretch the temporary. And also, with all due respect, government doesn't, even if you have very good people like Secretary Singson, government, since 1946, we don't have institutional memory. So if you have a new administration, maybe the administration now will say, this is temporary. Supposing they will still be there in the next administration, will the next administration respect, honor the temporary? And then another condition we had when I met with Secretary, that was the day before he accepted the position. There are best practices in the world and lessons to be learned from mistakes made. Best practice, Hiroshima, Japan. 130,000 people were killed. Then they got hit by the worst super typhoon and got flooded. And then they declared Hiroshima as a global center for peace against atomic bomb. I met the mayor of Hiroshima, and now it's the most livable cities in the world. Warsaw, Poland, the most devastated city after World War II, and Manila was the second devastated. We had the opportunity to build back better in Manila, but we did not have a Douglas MacArthur for construction in Japan and a Marshall Plan like Europe. So I thought Secretary Ping Lacson would be a rehab czar. But 10 days after, he was appointed a coordinator. In emergency cases, the words coordinator and committee takes time to take decision. So the decision then was get the private sector in. That's why I'm from the private sector trying to help. And in fact, I said I'll help 100% volunteer, November 30 to December 30. I'm already overextended. Now we're working with the volunteer organizations from all over the world, like Chuchi of headquartered from in Taiwan, with donors and volunteers from 42 countries. There are a lot of good news out of this. Unfortunately, sometimes the good news doesn't get given space in some of our news reporting.
Well, I think people are getting impatient and medyo nakatutok yung mga tao, making sure that our people will actually get what they deserve, and that to make sure too na walang mangyayaring hocus-pocus, anomalya, korupsyon. Yun naman ho siguro yung tututukan, kaya parang may nakita lang na konting butas na, uy, overpriced na, medyo nagre-react na ho tayo, mabilis.
One measure that Secretary Ping Lacson had agreed on is, which he is going to do, medyo delayed lang donor siguro, website. All the contractors, suppliers, and consultants will be in the website.
So transparent.
And all the donors and who are the beneficiaries. And people who are accusing without really looking at overpriced and all of that, anomalies, you should first look at the bill of materials, bill of quantities, and specifications before you take judgment.
Yes. Ms. Carvalho, I'd just like to ask, from your point of view and from your research, what has been built so far? Do you think it's substandard, and for what we are intending to spend on those that have already been built? Is the Philippine government on the losing end here, and are people also not being properly taken care of?
The Philippines has created an excellent international reputation, because all the accumulation of experience, unfortunately, to dealing with 20 plus typhoon every year. So it is very widely recognized in many international spheres that the best practices have been really dealt and improved here in the Philippines. One example is the cluster system that the UN proposed on the 2005, Philippines adopted immediately on the 2007. And we received many requests for missions to come and understand, to talk to the government to understand. So indeed, there is a lot of expertise in the country to deal with the issues. And the international standards are being followed. And it's not only on construction. We have international standards regarding introduction of formulas that we deal very well with the DSWD, which UNICEF works and WHO works close to the DSWD regarding the prevention that mothers go through a stress, of course, during trauma, and there's an effort to prevent that they stop breastfeeding the children. So this is also an international standard. Philippines is a signatory of this, and also it's signatory of the international standards, and not signatory, but has been following very well the Bunkhouses standards.
Madam, so you're saying that the Philippines is actually compliant?
It is. Yes. What is Philippines is what happened. I totally agree with an architect that it was a great opportunity to come back to the standards, and the fast way that the government reacted, and really because one of the biggest standards is the size, and really showing that each person has access to 3.5 meters, and the family as a whole 18 square meters. Sorry. So it was solved by eliminating a division. And the question on segregation of gender regarding bunkhouses is very much related to the access to latrines. Indeed, there is very clear information that the latrines have to be segregated. But inside
mga toilet po yun.
Toilets, yes.
Toilet po yun.
Water
Water closet po yung
Yes.
latrine. Okay.
I agree with her. Just
Yes,
interrupt.
po.
Secretary Singson, he responded less than 24 hours.
So far.
I said it on TV January 6, 7 p.m. I think before noontime, he was in Tacloban, calling me up, and he told me the first time he was made aware that there are such standards, and he adjusted. And I think one thing here that the UN is doing is not just dimensions, the human dignity,
Yes.
the family,
Yes.
and so on.
So, Ms. Luiza, can we say that the UN, being represented by you at the moment, is pleased with the adjustments that have been made by government regarding the issue of bunkhouses?
The UN worked very close to the government in learning from the Philippine experience, and also working together to improve the international standards and attending to international standards. And Secretary Singson has been very open. I think his office have never received many visitors from the UN, because since then we've been implementing the standards and revising some of them, trying to improve also, because the standards are to be met. But if we can improve the dignity and the quality of life of the community, it would be much better.
May tanong ako kay Asec Cabrera ng social welfare, no? Kasi maganda ito ang pinag-uusapan na dapat daw tamang espasyo, may gender sensitive, may kanya-kanyang toilet.
Ventilation.
Parang mukhang makaka-jackpot pa yung karamihan sa mga kababayan natin na nawasak yung mga bahay. Dahil alam natin mga Pilipino, sanay tayo magsiksikan. Sabi nga, kung maliit ang kumot, matuto kang, anong tawag doon? Pag maliit ang kumot?
Mamaluktot.
Mamaluktot. Ayun.
Saka yung kung pwede na. Yung pwede na.
That's the pwede na.
Correct.
It's not pwede na. It's not building back better.
Okay,
Right.
ayaw na natin yon. Yeah. So mukhang may mangyayaring maganda dito. Ang tanong ko lang po, ma'am, sa inyo, dahil nakakasalamuhan ninyo yung ating mga kababayan doon sa mga naapektuhan, mga biktima po, masaya po ba sila so far doon sa natanggap o nakalipat na ho sila dito sa mga bunkhouses na so far na sabi nila hindi pa of international standard pero at least mabilis na nagawa kaysa maghintay sila ng mahaba pang panahon bago makalipat doon sa permanent na residence nila. Kumbaga, ito yung parang stage 2. No? Imbis na stage 1, stage 2 permanent, parang nagkaroon ng stage 3. May transition period. Masaya po ba ang ating kababayan?
Yung ating, gusto kong i-contextualize.
Sige po, ma'am.
Yung ating pinakamalakas at pinakamasigasig na partner along shelter is the Department of Public Works and Highways. No? Kami sa DSWD, hindi kami yung gumagawa, hindi kami in terms of structure, but kami yung beneficiaries ng outputs ng DPWH. So, local government unit and DSWD, kami yung tumitingin kung sino nga yung ating dapat i-prioritize para mag-occupy doon sa ating mga bunkhouses. May mga bunkhouses na tayong na-occupy na, like for example, Giwan, doon sa may Palo, pero yung ating sa Tacloban ay inaayos pa natin at DPWH had really responded to immediately. Yung issue had became so hot nung first few days ng January, kaya naman DPWH, DSWD, we meet immediately with our UN partners, particularly those in shelter, camp management, at saka yung WASH. No? Protection cluster also participated at talagang binigyan kaagad ng tugon ng DPWH. Yung sinabi kasing complaint na napakaliit na magka-cramp daw yung pamilya, sa totoo lang, marami sa ating mga kababayan na before Yolanda, maliliit na talaga yung mga bahay nila. At dito, nakikita namin yung may opportunity talaga for building back better. However, yung transition home na yon talagang mainam na doon sila habang nag-aantay pa nung permanent shelter na matapos. Yung context kasi ng Tacloban and other municipalities along Eastern Samar, east and west side of Leyte, talagang napakaliit o kulang ang spaces o yung mga espasyo kung saan tayo makapagpagawa ng permanent shelter. Sa Tacloban lamang, kung titingnan natin, kung i-consider natin yung requirements na dapat hindi bababa sa 40 meters from the easement, high tide, talagang napakaliit ng espasyo na pupwede nating pagtayuan, no, ng permanent shelter. Kaya yung kadamihan ng mga areas doon ay talagang no-build zones. So, yung bunkhouses ngayon, kahit gustuhin pa nating padamihin, yung isang requirements natin for space ay nagiging problematic din dahil nga walang space na makonsider nating safe. Yung bunkhouses, kung ating titingnan, nagpo-provide yung ating existing na model ng bunkhouses ng DPWH, talaga namang considered protection. The concerns as to gender-based violence, yung access nila sa latrines, yung lighting, yung ventilation, had been considered na. Yung reklamo
So, masaya
lang
po
nila.
sila?
Kadamihan doon sa mga nakausap namin, walang reklamo. At ang sabi nila, mas maganda pa po yun, ma'am, kaysa andoon kami sa trapal, yung ating mga tarpaulins, at saka yung tent na ngayon ay talagang binabaha. No? So,
May gusto yata yung dugtong si architect.
May comment ako yan.
Sige po, sir.
In fact, after Secretary Singson spoke to me, January 7, the day after, I think 2 days after that, Secretary Lacerda spoke to me. And I suggested, I think we should call them shelters for the survivors. Stop calling them bunkhouses. Because bunkhouses started from the cowboys, so they are near the cattle. Then bunkhouses is for male, lowest paid laborers of construction in the Middle East. Now that it's enlarged, maybe we call them row houses instead of bunkhouses.
Is there a plan to do that, sir?
The bunkhouses are for the lowest paid laborers.
transition
Transition
housing.
Transition housing
Maybe
is ang tawag
maybe
ngayon.
the, the way it was communicated.
So they know it's temporary.
Yeah,
no? I think
temporary.
doon nagsisimula rin
Yeah,
yung mga
the
ganyan,
bunkhouse
ano.
itself and every family in this country, they have a laborer in the Middle East. And you start from a unskilled labor, you stay in a bunkhouse. Male, not families. Maybe from this program, let's change the name into row houses.
It's more appropriate.
Or decent housing for the survivors. Rather than bunkhouses. That's from the cowboys to be near their cows.
With all the animal waste, right?
Okay. Siguro, naku, maraming pang katanungan at entertaining na natin yung mga katanungan ng
Kaya
ating
communication
mga
talaga,
kababayan sa pagbabalik po ng Diyos at Bayan. Makalipas lamang po ang ilang mga paalala. Kaya huwag po kayo naalis. Nagbabalik ang Diyos at Bayan sa ating paksang kontrobersya sa Bunkhouses, Lilinawin. Naglilinaw-linaw na, no? Pare, no? Unti-unti.
Alam mo, tama yung sinabi
Hindi
mo,
na bunkhouses.
Palafox na dapat hindi tawagin talagang bunkhouses kasi parang derogatory bunkhouses.
Ano na nga
For survivors, mas
Ano na nga
maganda.
Transitional housing.
Transitional housing. Ayan.
Yeah,
So,
that's an
malinaw ho na
international,
transition lang, ano, hindi ho
transitional.
permanente. Kagaya ng tanong ni Florante King ng Cubao, pansamantala lang po bang proyektong bunkhouse o panghabang buhay na? Pansamantala daw.
Pansamantala.
Huwag naman habang buhay. From Emmanuel Santiago ng Pasay City, ano po ba ang mga tamang materyales na dapat gamitin para maging matibay ang proyektong bunkhouse? Tatanungin natin yan. Bigyan daan lang natin ang susunod na katanungan o komento for Secretary Singson by Noel Sereno ng Antipolo. Hindi overpricing ang mga bunkhouses, pero substandard lang ang mga materyales. Dapat habulin nila ang mga contractors. From Taguig City, Ronel Garcia, magkano po ba ang budget ng gobyerno para sa isang bunkhouse? At nasasabi nilang overpriced. Sana makita naman ng iba ang ginagawang maganda ng gobyerno. Hindi lang paninira ang alam nila. And from Balagtas, Bulacan, Alfie Esguera, pati ba naman sa mga Yolanda survivor, buhay na buhay ang korupsyon, nakakahiya sa mga ibang bansa na nag-donate para sa proyektong ito. Mahiya naman sana sila. At si June Contero ng Antipolo, portable cabin ang dapat ginawang design sa halip na bunkhouse dahil mas matibay ito sa mga bagyo. Ano po ba talaga ang cost at ano po bang materyales ang dapat at what's the ideal po?
Okay, tinignan na namin lahat ng possible options. No? Cost, ano ba yung practical? Ang practical dito, yung pinaka-available na material. No? Ano ba ang available material dyan? Coco lumber. No? So immediately, sabi namin lahat yung natumbang coco logs dyan, dalahin nyo sa opisina, doon sa DPWH regional office, makahingi kami sa DNR ng portable sawmill. Para lahat nung nakokolekta namin, kino-convert namin into coco lumber para mapakinabangan. No? So yun ang mga, ideally, coco lumber, yun ang available. At isipin natin, pinakamatagal na gamit dapat ng transitional housing, 2 taon. No? So, kahoy pa rin. No? Yung mga nagsasuggest na container housing, isipin mo, wala nga, kulang na kulang ng gamit. No? Para may tayo mo yung container, dadalhin mo doon, isang bahay lang, isang trailer ang dadalhin lang noon. No? Samantalang kung kahoy yan, ilang salansan ng plywood, ilang salansan ng GI sheet ang may lalagay mo. No? So, lumalabas hindi practical at mas mahal yung container housing. Now,
At saka yung problema sa supply.
problema sa supply.
Siguro isang katanungan dyan, curious yung mga tao, ito bang perang gagastusin ay yung galing sa donasyon ng international community o budget
gusto
po
kong
ninyo?
paliwanag.
Yes.
Yung ginagamit dito ay yung ginamit ng international napunta sa kanilang dinalang materyales. No? So madalit sabi, pera nila ginamit nila sa pagbibili ng pagdala ng tents at saka yung tarpaulin na dinistribute. Yung ginagamit sa bunkhouse, government, national government yon. So ang iniisip namin, sustainable dapat. No? Nasa susunod na bagyo, susunod na kwan, baka itayo namin dyan napakalaki, no? Dito sa Yolanda. susunod na bagyo, sustainable ba yan? No? So it has to be practical, sustainable na
Sabi nga, smarter, di ba?
Smarter,
realistic.
safer.
Oo.
Madam Carvalho, do we expect the international community, even the UN, to actually continue monitoring and sustaining and helping our government until, let's say, our people get or transfer to their permanent homes?
Well, yes, we have been discussing with the government for how long the UN plan specific
Yes.
should be implemented to. So there is a decision that the plan would cover and work together in the first phase, the relief response phase. So this is supposed to be ending by September and October. So the plan will run for the first year. Today we had a meeting with Secretary Laxon, and he's also inviting the UN to participate in the rehab phase, the agencies that are interested and have mandate for the rehab phase. So there will probably a connection of all the agencies into the rehab and recovery, rehabilitation phase throughout the next 4 years. But we are working together for these years, and yes, of course. And this the bunkhouse. One of the things that we were discussing was the not finding. I'm sorry, I'm not finding. I'm not following the Tagalog. I'm very sorry. So I'm going to insert
Yes,
in some because I had the connection. And one of the good things that the transitional housing, they have insurance actually because the government. Yes, of course, government is going to be running the transitional house. So in terms of repairs and substitution of material, so this will happen if something happen with the quality of the material. It's not because the market. It's been a very difficult moment in the market for the supply. The Secretary Laxon today just got asked us for the specification of the material. There's a small apparatus, 3 or 4, isn't it, Secretary Laxon, that has to be installed into the connections of the house, so make it stronger. There's no such a thing in the market of the Philippines. So Secretary Laxon is approaching the private sector. Approaching the private sector to provide it.
Mas
Yes.
mabuti siguro ipaliwanag.
Maganda ito. Sige po.
Ito yung gusto ng international community, yung sinatawag lang na-translate na nga sa vernacular
Mga paagi sa pagpatindog.
Hindi ko alam kung anong
Kapamaraanan sa pagpapatayo
ng mas matibay na
ng
bahay.
mas matibay na
Bisaya.
bahay.
Bisaya ho si Alex.
Hiligay nun.
So, isang sketch lang, isang page which we intended to distribute to the carpenters. It's so easy to follow. Ano ibig sabihin niyan? Halimbawa, yung paggagawa ng bubong. Ito, kung titingnan mo ng masusi, yung dito sa dulo, mas malapit yung pamakuan. Hindi yung pare-pareho, hanggang taas, pare-pareho ang distansya. Para din sa, ito kasing una natutuklab yung nasa baba. So kung mas maraming pako na ginamit mo dyan, yung tinatawag lang umbrella nails, yung may malaking ulo, then hindi madaling liparin yan. Okay? Ito, yung mga between beams and rafters and purlins, hindi lang pako. Kasi tayo, pako lang ng pako dyan. Minsan tagilid pa. So, hindi malakas ang kapit nun. So, meron silang sinasuggest na ito yung tinatawag lang strap, cyclone strap. Kontra lakas ng hangin yan. Para dikit-dikit. Ang problema natin, hindi common sa atin ito Wala tayong itong materials na yan sa Pilipinas.
Pero yan sa abroad, yan po ang ginagamit.
Nakita ko to sa Guam, dun sa mga Pacific.
So, iimportahin po ho natin yan.
Yun ang hinahanap ko sa kanila. Pwede.
Pwede
Naglalabas
bang
tayo
i-supply?
dito. Yan ang dalahin nyo. Kasi mga kahoy, meron kami
When you say dalihin ninyo, i-donate, hindi ho tayo bibili.
Anyway, kami nagpapahanap na, nagpapasource
Pero
na
willing ho
ako nito.
tayong bumili.
Oo naman.
Basta
Dahil
magawa
para
lang.
mas matibay ito.
Yes, sir.
Para pag nag-distribute
Okay.
kami, kasama ito.
Pero tanong ko ho, sino? Mga eksperto bang karpintero? Ititrain po ninyo yung mga taong bayan mismo para to build their own
Kausap
houses?
ko na si Joel Villanueva, kasama sa training nila. Binigay ko sa kanila to pag nagturo kayo sa karpintero, isama nyo na ito. Kasi gaya nito, tayo ang mag-construct puros vertical members. Ito sinasabi nila, para hindi madaling itumba, magkaroon ka ng bracing. No? Ito, hindi natin ginagawa yan eh.
Hindi nga, may V
Isang dagdag na kahoy lang yan eh.
correct.
No?
Reinforcement, ano po?
Para kahit na kalugin, against earthquake, lakas na hangin, matibay. No? So, ito, nakalagay dyan, huwag ka dyan sa tabi ng tubig. No? Pwede ka riyan, huwag ka din sa tabi ng bundok. No? So, isang page, isang pahina lang. No? Maintindihan ng madali ng mga karpintero.
So, responsibilidad po siyempre ng LGU na nabantayan kung saan magtatayo. Ano? May mga isi-specify na mga areas.
That's correct.
Madam, sabi ko nga kanina, malapit po kayo dun sa mga ating mga pamilya. Ano po ang mga nasa sa puso po ng ating mga kababayan patungkol po sa mga pag-aasikasong ginagawa sa kanila ng gobyerno at saka yun na rin po yung involvement ng international community. That's why it's very important, you know, that everything is transparent and held accountable to the international community because our people appreciated yung pong pagbuhos, expression of love and concern by the international community. Ma'am.
Yeah, what we did kata, Alex, may grupo kaming pinapadalaw sa bunkhouse kasi mas maganda yung the best way is to see is to believe. The usual Filipino logic of looking into things. So we know that ang daming mga nagrereklamo pero nung nakita nila some family heads we brought to the site and they're saying ang ganda nito ma'am, no? So the appreciation is there. Kaso nga lang, ito yung medyo tahimik na klase ng mga tao na daig ng mga maiingay at naniniwala at nanunulsol. No? But the good thing here is that yung mga tao mismo, sila ang nagsabi na pag kami kasama na dito, tutulong sila sa pag-maintain. Which is, kailangan naman talaga, hindi purely government, but ini-imbibe din namin sa kanila ano yung responsibility nila.
Magka-sense of ownership
yes,
sila.
The ownership. Kasi imagine they'll be occupying the space for 6 months or even 2 years. No? And hanggat hindi matapos yung kanilang permanent shelter, talagang yun ang kanilang tirahan. So while transition siya, but until such time na ma-resolve at maitayo yung permanent shelter, ownership nila yun eh.
Yes. It's about time, sense of
At saka
ownership.
yung maintenance.
Yes. Maalis na ho yung mendicant, poverty mentality,
Because the
entitlement
incremental
mentality.
approach.
Tsaka,
Yes, ma'am.
idagdag ko lang.
Yes po.
Yung bunkhouse kasi nababawasan at nawala yung parang victim mentality.
Yes.
Kasi ando na sila a very dignifying location at protected sila. So, yun yung isa sa mga nakakatulong
Okay.
bakit bumababa ngayon yung criticism.
Yes.
Although meron pa ring mga kababayan natin
Nahihimas-masan na ho sila
Pero alam niyo,
unti-unti.
ma'am, tama kayo. Dapat talaga tingnan because hindi natin
you're
alam
right.
bakit may
You're
mga...
correct.
May report pa nga, may na-rape daw eh. Di ba may natatanggap na mga report na gano'n? Wala akong katotohanan yun, di
Wala
ba?
kaming natanggap officially sa
Oo,
DSWD.
pero may mga usap-usap, narinig ninyo?
Sa
May mga
evacuation
report.
centers.
Evacuation center po yun. Isa yun sa emergency type of
Kaya gusto niyong
emergency
alisin na
shelter.
sila agad sa emergency, sa evacuation
Yung walang
centers.
privacy, yung walang
Walang privacy.
segregation of gender.
Correct, correct.
Kaya kami gumagawa ng temporary or
Okay.
transitional housing.
Transitional houses. Transition houses. Ang curious ako at curious ang marami dahil pinag-uusapan natin transition houses. Ano kaya yung permanent? Ano ang plano for the permanent and long-lasting solutions that we can propose? And hopefully, it will be heeded by everybody, not just government, but and the private sector, but especially yung tayo pong mga mamamayan. Yan po ang ating tututukan sa pagpapatuloy po ng Diyos at Bayan. Makalipas lamang po ang ilang mga paalala kayo kailan. Nagbabalik ang Diyos at Bayan sa ating paksang kontrobersya sa Bunkhouses, Lilinawin. Bigandaan muna natin ang mga reaksyon ng ating mga televiewers from Pateros, Sherwin Fajardo, hanggang kailan po ang tulong ng international community o UN para sa mga Yolanda survivor. The question is, until when will the international community or United Nations extend help to the Yolanda survivors?
Well, as I said, until the end of the relief phase, we will be engaged under the coordination of the DSWD and with all the other line departments until the end of the year. It's called the relief phase response. For this, we have pledged internationally, planned it is around 791,000. Yes, 791,000. And one of the things that is more expensive in response like this one is exactly housing. But housing is not appealing for the international community donors. It's coming, some resources, but it's not appealing as other areas that involve usually food or children.
Yes.
So this is usually a very underfunded area. And we really want to support the efforts of the country, but we found that there is difficulties. Equipment are very and material also are very expensive. So we do have to think of creative alternatives. One of them is trying to recycling some material in Tacloban and other cities. But if we are really not there and really supporting the government in sending the message of building back better, safer, and smarter, and the tendency is that the community, because the community is very proactive and respond very fast, is the tendency as the community can rebuild back worse, and so it's very important that the market is stable and the material are there, and so we can, under the leadership of the government, support the construction in a way that does not interrupt the cycle, as it was explained by Secretary Singson, that it's no more than 4 months in a tent, no more than 2 years in a transitional house.
Thank you very much for that answer and that assurance. From Pasay City, si Sheila de Guzman, ang tanong po niya, ano naman po ang plano daw ng gobyerno sa mga survivor na Yolanda na nandito sa Metro Manila at ayaw na pong bumalik sa Tacloban, Madam?
Ito ay medyo challenging, ano?
Opo.
Kasi may mga kababayan tayo at marami ito na talagang at the height of Yolanda, they decided to move out of Tacloban and Eastern Visayas area. May mga pamilya tayo na hanggang ngayon ay hinahawas natin sa DSWD, yung aming Jose Familia Center, ito yung aming transient home. At meron kaming mga proyekto na ibibigay para lamang makabalik sila doon. Yung isang nakita naming assurance at para magiging motivation para bumalik sila doon ay yung shelter. Kasi sa ngayon, kung babalik sila doon, talagang evacuation center or tent pa rin yung titirahan nila. So, yung isang assurance din, dahil nga yung DPWH ay tumutulong sa amin sa pagbibigay ng yero, kung ang kanilang mga bahay ay andoon sa okay build zones, pwede namin silang bibigyan din ng mga GI sheets, yung mga yero, at yung mga shelter materials na iba, yung pako, umbrella, nails, na dinidistribute namin. Yung iba naman na hindi sila pwedeng mag-construct doon sa kanilang dati o the original location, ay ini-encourage naming to move out and temporarily nga kung as we construct more transitional shelter, amin din silang i-accommodate. But for the time being, while they are here, talagang tinutulungan namin. Yung exit naman from Eastern Visayas, talagang nag-notify na kami sa aming mga kapartner sa Philippine Air Force na hindi na kami magpapasakay para libreng pasahe papunta rito kumbaga short of discouraging them, but really inspiring them to remain where they are currently, because ang gobyerno naman ay talagang kontudo ang tulong. Tudong-tudo talaga yung tulong. Not only DSWD, DPWH, but all the other government agencies ay tulong-tulong ngayon.
Secretary Singson, nakalimutan yata nating sagutin, itong permanent houses na itatayo eventually, magkakano pong kailangan dyan?
Compared to yung bunkhouse na tinatanong kanina, ang cost ng bunkhouse is about 2,009 to about 3,200 per square meter. No? Yung 3,002 kasama na yung common kitchen, common. Pero kung shelter lang mismo, 2,009. As against a permanent shelter that could cost easily about 6,000 per square meter. So halos doble. No? Now, ang plano ng gobyerno sa ngayon, no, dahil nga sa limited space kung saan ka magtatayo, imbis na magtayo pa kami ng transition housing, kung may available na for permanent site, tayuan na ng permanent. No? Dahil marami nang nagbo-volunteer, ito yung tinututukan ni Secretary Lacson. No? Marami nang nagbo-volunteer from the private sector who want to contribute for the housing. No? So whatever is offered as available permanent relocation, imbis na bunkhouse or transition housing ilagay, permanent na dahil nandiyan na yung mga magtatayo. No? So kami, gaya nun, sa Tanawan, nag-commit na kami na maghahanda ng kalye, kami na magpapatag ng lugar para maumpisa na yung tayo ng permanent housing.
Okay. Architect Palafox, you've been an advocate of houses on stilts at yun ang dapat na maging bahay na standard para sa Pilipinas. Ito po bang mga programa ng gobyerno to establish permanent homes now for our survivors, okay po ba to? Or would you go another way and pursue that houses on stilts?
Several donor institutions, international and local, I'm trying to convince them that it's not just shelter. It should be communities, which we've done it around the world, like Sri Lanka. We're given 100 hectares for a certain number of families. They have schools, place to live, work, shop, and dine, and worship, and learn with health care, and maybe wellness center in a walkable, bikeable community, environment friendly, and safer and mixed use and so on. And best practices in the world, like I know the public works may not have the budget for that. The complete street is 1/3 for moving traffic lanes, 1/3 for pedestrians and bicycles, and 1/3 for tree planting and landscaping. Now it's the opportunity to do it right. But maybe the budget of government is only for the paved road, not for the landscaping, not for the bicycle lanes. And again, this crisis created an opportunity to do the best practices.
Alagay ko, maganda yung naririnig ko kasi sa plano pala, merong bagong komunidad na tatayo. So hindi yung...
Not just houses.
Alam mo, gusto na natin alisin isipan natin sa squatter o sa informal settlers. So maganda ho yung sinasabi nyo dahil ito'y planado. At ito'y sinasabi natin, blessing in disguise.
Doable po ba ito? Yung
Doable yan because planuhin lang ng tama, maraming gustong tumulong.
Yes. Wow, thank you very much. Siguro as a final word from all our guests, we just like to ask you, what do you foresee or what do you propose as a long-lasting solution to itong problema, this problem that the Philippines has been encountering? Do you have any word for us, ma'am?
Well, the Philippines is in the forefront of the world, and I don't think only in the terms of solidarity that we have seen, but also in terms of the moment to ask for the right people to come and support so many events that happen, so many efforts that are already in the country to deal with the challenges here. The right measures have been taken. The non-build zones is a very correct measure. Maybe it should be called non-residential zones because, of course, we will have to build in some zones because livelihood, sometimes the fishers will depend on their livelihoods, and we will have also playgrounds and areas for the community. So it's much less a non-build zone than a non-residential zone. But the measures have been taken. And what we need really is have a consensus around the major challenges of the country and really define standards and define proposals to deal with them.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Luiza Carvalho of the United Nations.
Thank you.
Architect Palafox.
Yeah, this crisis created an opportunity for us, a great opportunity to do things better, do things right. And the opportunity will not always be there. So this is an all-nation partnership, an international partnership. which we can learn from here. And the ingredients of success are really, we should have a strong political will, good planning and good design, and good governance. And it's also opportunity for us. I think the last time I guested here, I was president of the Management Association of the Philippines, and our advocacy that time was address our biggest challenges, which are corruption, criminality, and climate change. This is an opportunity to address them more effectively towards good governance, towards better peace and order, and address climate change and the environment. And with that, this opportunity to do it, 7 provinces just for Yolanda. We have not even discussed the man-made disaster of Zamboanga, the earthquake of Bohol. And this is now the opportunity for us to work together.
Yes. Thank you very much, Architect Palafox. Asec Cabrera.
Yeah, thank you. You know, pag minsan, yung sinasabi ngang building back better, parang napakagandang pakinggan, but this will only happen if all the sectors concerned with providing safer, better, and resilient communities are really supporting the initiative. So, yung mga kapartners namin, and lalo na yung mga kababayan natin, who really desired to be moved out of the very dangerous areas, ito na yung pagkakataon. No? So, yung amin lang mungkahi na sana in the initiatives that we're going to implement with the other partners, DPWH, with the UN organization, sana tumulong din sa amin yung mga kababayan natin, yung mga local government units, kasi sila yung #1 na magiging responsible in terms of making sure na available yung space at available in a safer manner, na yung safe talaga. No? So, again, ito yung wishes namin, and I'm sure yung mga kababayan natin ay yun din ang pangarap.
Yes, thank you very much, Asec Cabrera. Secretary Singson.
Yeah. Sa amin, napakaliwanag naman yung instructions ng Pangulo. No? Build back better, safer, resilient structures. No? So, hindi lang dito sa shelter, inaasikaso na din namin yung disenyo, bagong disenyo ng mga eskwelahan, mga hospital, at saka yung mga kali at mga tulay. No? Para ganon, pagkakataon talaga ito. No? Imbis na ibalik lang natin sa dating kondisyon, wag na lang, pagandahin na natin, iayos na natin, lagay na natin sa tama. Pero yung kailangan talaga tulong-tulong. No? Yung mga apektado, yung local governments, yung national government, kailangan sama-sama tayo rito. Otherwise, may maiiwan at maiiwan. No? So, that's what we don't want to happen.
Saka wag ho kayong magre-resign. Kailangan. We're all asking him na to resign.
Yes, please.
Hindi naman siguro that's out of frustration.
Oo nga, oo. Huwag ko kayo ma-frustrate. Oo, kasi
bawal nga talaga ang pikon dito.
correct, talo ang pikon, walang pikunan. Para ikaw, anong masasabi mo dito?
Well, ang ganda. Ako nga, lalo akong naliwanagan dahil sabi nga, ito nga na nga yung pagkakataon eh. Let's not miss our opportunity. In fact, sabi nga ng mga taga-ibang bansa, in the Philippines, they have it all. They have killer earthquake, they have floods, they have typhoons, yet they are resilient. So ito naman, this time, ipakita natin talaga the true indomitable spirit of the Filipino.
Yan.
Tama tayong lahat eh. We cannot do this without the bayanihan spirit.
Yan.
And of course, yung faith natin kay God that this country will rise again. Diba?
Mabanggit ko lang,
Yes.
meron one nation, one prayer sa Lunes.
Sa Lunes, correct.
So, pakiplug nyo na lang.
Opo, sa January 20 po, inuutos ho ng ating Pangulong Aquino ang National Prayer Day para sa Pilipinas. Sana po lahat po tayo, bawat isa sa atin, seriously lift up our country unto God and dedicate our country to God. Inumpisahan na ho natin yan eh. Nandun na ho sa ating pananalapi. Nakasulat doon ay pinagpala ang bansa na ang Diyos, ang Panginoon. Ay sana nga ay pagpalain ang ating bansa kung talagang ang tunay na Panginoon ang ating itinataas sa lahat ng bagay. Nabanggit ni Alex, bukod sa bayanihan spirit, ay sana ay huwag natin kakalimutan ang Diyos, lalo na maging hindi lamang sa disaster, kasi yun ang problema ng mga tao. Kumisan kung kailan lang may problema, saka lamang lumalapit sa Diyos. Sana sa pang-araw-araw ay gagawin po natin yan. At utang na loob, tigilan na natin yung paninira at kakareklamo sa ating pamahalaan. Ano, yung mga magkokomento, sana ay ibigay na lamang ninyo yung magandang suggestion ninyo. Who knows, baka brilliant yung idea ninyo at yun ang i-adapt.
Saka
ng ating pamahalaan. Participate, oo. Partnership amongst everybody, the international community, government, private sector, and individuals, that's excellent. However, if we leave God out of the equation, it's gonna be in vain. Sabi rin sa ating Biblia, no? Apart from Jesus, we can do nothing. Sabi rin ho sa Psalm 127 verse 1, unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the watchmen stand guard in vain. Sa January 20 po, tatawagin natin ang makapangyarihang pangalan ng ating Panginoon para sakluban po niya, takluban niya ang buong Pilipinas at nang sa gayon ay puro biyaya at pagpapala lamang ang kanyang ibubuhos sa atin at tayo ililigtas sa anumang kapahamakan. Maraming salamat po sa inyong pagsubaybay sa programang Diyos at Bayan. Sa ngalan ni Brother Eddie Villanueva, ako po ang inyong lingkod Katay Inocencio, kasama si Alex Tinsay na nagsasabing sa lahat ng bagay dapat kasi talaga uunahin natin ang Diyos at nang bumangon ang ating bayan. God bless you more.